and we're reading from chapter 21, Bellowing Bulls. Hello and welcome back to Riverwood Cabin. I'm Rosie Boom and I'm reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night, the first book in the Barn Chronicles. And we're reading from chapter 21, Bellowing Bulls. The next day, Mum announced they were going to have a special Thanksgiving dinner that night. Auntie Penny is out of hospital at last. All the family are going to come and celebrate with us. She turned and smiled at Letitia. I'm so glad you're going to be here for it. Kate lit the fire early in the afternoon. A crisp wind sneaked through the cracks in the walls. This is the best place to be on a cold day, she told Alicia as she put another batch of biscuits in the homewood. There are too many holes in the barn for it ever to get really warm, but around the fire is lovely. Mum called Millie and Marilee inside and asked them to peel the potatoes and carrots. How come we can't play soccer with the boys? Millie frowned. It's not fair. You can go out again soon enough, answered Mum. We've got a lot to do to get ready for tonight, though. Millie looked at all the potatoes in the sink and groaned. It looked like there were enough to feed 100 people, not just 30. But it's a lot harder for me because I'm left-handed, she moaned. Never mind. Mum's voice was firm. The sooner you get started, the sooner you can get back to the soccer game. By the time it was dinner time, a cold rain had started to fall, and the wind whined and moaned around the barn like a grumpy child, as if it was trying to get inside to be close to the fire. Inside the barn was a crowd of people, all laughing and talking. Auntie Penny sat by the fire, her leg carefully positioned on a pillow that Mum had put on a chair. Millie glanced over at her and saw that her eyes were glistening with tears. She edged closer and heard Auntie Penny telling Mum, I can't believe I'm actually here in the barn, finally out of hospital. I feel all emotional. Millie felt warm inside. It had been a long haul for Auntie Penny. She remembered the awful night when Mum had come home from visiting her in the hospital and had burst into tears. I can't bear it, she had sobbed to Dad. I can't stand seeing her in so much pain. But now, here she was, in the barn, about to share a meal with them all. Dad finished carving the chicken and roast beef, Mum lit the candles, and Kate set the challah bread on the table. There were 2 loaves, both plaited and covered with poppy seeds. They were a delicious golden colour, and the smell of them made Millie's mouth water. Dad asked everyone to gather around the table. Welcome to our special Thanksgiving dinner tonight, he began. It's so good to have our friends from Hamilton here with us, and especially you, Penny. She nodded, and Millie saw her eyes fill with tears again. Then Dad turned and asked, Millie, can you tell everyone why we put poppy seeds all over the bread? Millie smiled. She knew the answer to that question. To remind us of the blessings of God that are too many to count. Absolutely, said Dad. And we have so many blessings to be thankful for tonight. Our friends, our families, Penny home from hospital, good food to eat. Millie looked over at Marilee. Their time here had gone so fast, but she wasn't going to think about them leaving tomorrow, not now. She was just going to make the most of having her best friend with her at this wonderful Thanksgiving dinner. The next day, after saying goodbye to Marilee, Millie didn't have time to feel too sad. Dad asked if she'd help him take 2 of the bulls down the driveway to the yards. One of them had been lame for some time with a swollen knee, and Dad had organised the vet to come and examine him. "We'll need to take another bull along for company," Dad told her. "They'll be a lot quieter that way." Mum offered to come along as well. The bulls trotted quietly down the drive and into the yards. Dad shut the gate and then rattled one of the loose wooden rails with a frown. "These yards are in desperate need of fixing. If either of these bulls pushes against the rails, they'll collapse like a pack of cards. Rose, you stand here and keep them away from the railing, just in case they get all argy-bargy." The bulls sniffed their way around the yards and then started pushing and shoving against each other. Millie came and stood by Mum. "Dad said we've ended up bringing the biggest bull of them all as company for the sick one." "Great," said Mum, but she didn't look too worried. The bulls were docile and friendly. Dad came up behind them. "We could have trouble. Look over there." Millie spun around and looked over at the neighbour's paddock. A massive Simmental bull was trotting over towards the fence. Behind him, a group of cows grazed in the long grass. He reached the fence, shook his huge head, and then bellowed. Immediately, the two black bulls in the yard bellowed back. Mum put her hands over her ears. "They're so loud," she shouted above the noise. "Just you wait," muttered Dad. But when Millie looked back at the Simmental, he had turned his back and was moving away. "Watch what he does," said Dad. The bull began to push and herd his cows away across the paddock until he had them all in the far corner. Then he swung around and came charging back. He skidded to a heavy stop at the fence and began pawing at the ground. Dust flew up into the air. He shook his great head and bellowed and roared. The two bulls ran over to where Mum and Millie were standing and roared back. "Don't move away," shouted Dad above the noise. "We can't let them push against these rails." Millie threw up her hands and made a loud noise. They stared at her with their black eyes and then backed away just a few steps. The next minute the Simmental snorted and Millie jumped. He snorted again, a loud, explosive noise, and Millie saw the air rush from his nostrils. Mum had covered her ears again. "I've never seen anything like it," she shouted to Millie. "It looks just like the snorting bulls you see drawn in books. Look at the puffs of air coming out of his nostrils." Millie nodded, her eyes wide. The whole valley seemed to throb and ring with the sound of the bellowing and the snorting and the roaring. They stood between the Simmental and the black bulls with their hands over their ears. It felt like they were in the middle of a war zone. Finally, the Simmental stopped his roaring and snorting and backed away from the fence. With one final glance at the yards, he turned and moved back towards his herd. "Good riddance." Dad wiped his brow. "I was a bit worried there for a moment. The sooner I build a stronger set of yards,